And so it is important that Kat and I, we stand on the fact that we made a commitment to one another until death. Now, have there been times in our marriage where not being together seemed easier? Yes. Have there been times where we have been in the marriage counselor's office? Absolutely. Is it possible that we might be back in a marriage counselor office at some point? We're open to it if we need it. But the reality is we made a commitment to one another until death. And we didn't just make a commitment to stay together, we made a commitment to love one another. That's why we have to remember that love isn't something that you fall in and out of. Love is something that you sometimes feel, but always must choose. And so, a song that's been meaningful to me, I've quoted it here before, but Ben Rector has a song called Note to Self, and in it he says, note to self, keep choosing her. She's yours and wonderful. Forever's a long time to be sad. It's just a good reminder. Like Kat and I had a 5 to 10 minute fight last night. I just wanted to make sure that I was getting ready to talk about marriage. So I was like, let's do this, all right? But here's the reality. Like, my responsibility is to keep choosing her because she is wonderful. And forever's a long time to be sad. And so I want to answer a couple questions for you right now that I hope that you hear. Because I'm encouraging you to go back and revisit what you said in your vows. But here's the first question I want to answer for you. Is there someone else in this world that you could probably have an easier marriage with? Probably so. The answer is probably yes. Is there someone in this world that you could probably have an easier marriage with? Yeah. Here's the second question. Is there someone else in this world that you could have a more God-glorifying marriage with? 100% no. Because just because a marriage is easier doesn't make it more glorifying to God. God is actually glorified when married couples fight with one another and then pursue reconciliation together, because our message of the gospel is a message of reconciliation. And when we are faithful to one another, when we fight for the marriage, when we love one another unconditionally, all we're doing is pointing to the love that we've experienced from Jesus Christ. So you need to know the person that you're married to now. I can tell you, there is no one that you could be married to that you could glorify God more with right now. And so let me encourage you. Revisit your vows. Go back and look. What did you commit to do? What did you promise before God? How long did you promise to do it? And don't renegotiate. Now, if you're sitting there and you're saying, well, you know what? This message is a little too late because you're divorced right now. Okay, well, let me just say this. If you are divorced and you and your former spouse, if neither of you has gotten remarried yet, then here is what I want to ask you to consider doing. I want to ask you to consider going back and looking at your original commitment. I want to ask you to go back and look at the vows that you made on your wedding day. Sit with those vows, read them, then get on your knees and open up your hands and just say, God, have your way with my life. That's all I'm asking you to do. I'm just asking you to consider that. Okay? The next key truth to experiencing God's goodness in your marriage is this: practice oneness. Practice oneness. Remember what verse 24 says. It says, for this reason, a man will leave his father and his mother and be joined to his wife, and the two shall become one flesh. When I talk about practicing oneness, here is what I'm really saying. Don't miss it. All I am saying is be who you already are. Because in God's eyes, when you said I do, you're no longer two separate people from different families. You are now one. And you are one family. So in God's eyes, you are one. So when I say practice oneness, I'm just saying be who you already are. Oneness refers to spiritual intimacy and emotional intimacy and physical intimacy. So practice oneness. Here's the problem. Too many couples operate solely as roommates. So you live in the same place, you get up at different times, and you go to work in different places, and you come home at different times, and you eat dinner together sometimes and separate other times, and then at night you kind of find your place on the couch, and she finds her place on a different chair, and y'all kind of do your thing. So you live in the same place, and so you're technically married, but you're not acting like you really are, that you're one. And then too many couples function solely as teammates. You're like, wait. I thought we were supposed to be teammates. You are. But too many people are functioning solely as teammates. Where you got your team of kids, and it's like, okay, so tag, you're it. Okay, you're going to take the kids, and you're going to drop them off there, and I'm going to be over here, and then I'll pick them up, and then we've got 10 soccer practices that we need to get to tonight, and so we're going to divide and conquer, and you're going to go there, and you're just like ships in the night, and you've got your whole family calendar, and everything is color-coded for each kid, and so y'all are teammates, taking care of the team, getting it done. That's good, that's important, but you are more than teammates. You are spouses, and you're one. You're one. And so let me just encourage you to take a step. Number one, with spiritual intimacy. I want to challenge every husband in the room this week. You pick the time, either in the morning or the evening, and I want to encourage you to invite your wife to pray with you. And for you to ask your wife, hey, what's one thing I can pray for you? And then wife, you ask your husband, what's one thing I can pray for you? And then husband, you take the lead. You'll get on your knees, hold hands, and pray for one another. Do that as many days this week as possible. In terms of pursuing emotional intimacy, my encouragement is to establish recurring non-negotiable date nights. Kat and I have really benefited just from Googling great date night questions that will keep you talking for hours. And then physical oneness, begin to move towards sex regularly. Regularly is different for every couple. We talked about it months ago, but with the discussion guide for this talk, I will repost some of the questions that you can sit with your spouse and ask. But one of the best things you can do, guys, is just evaluate your rhythms as a couple. Because you have to remember, rhythms and routines can sometimes lead to ruts. So like for Kat and I right now, one of the routines that we've identified is right now, my teenage son and I, a lot of nights we're watching Stranger Things together, which is kind of fun. But then my wife is going and falling asleep to Friends in the bedroom. She's more of a Friends listener than Friends watcher, because she just sets it up and turns the other way and falls asleep. And that's great. But even the other night, I was like, okay, this isn't the best thing. Like, I'm having fun with my son, and I know Kat's enjoying the extra rest, but like, if we're not careful, that routine will lead to a rut. So evaluate. Move towards oneness. Practice it. Next, quickly, model and reward vulnerability. Model and reward vulnerability. What did 2:25 say? It said that the man and his wife were both naked and were not ashamed. They were naked and not ashamed. What does it mean? It means that there was complete openness in the marriage. There was complete trust. And because there was complete trust, Adam and Eve stood before each other with nothing to hide. They were fully known and fully loved. That's what you want in marriage. That is the greatest gift that Kat has given to me in our marriage, is that she has allowed me to be fully known and fully loved. And so I remember we had a conversation before we got married where I just shared honestly with her about different unhealthy decisions that I made prior to marriage. And she did not flinch. Instead, she extended the grace of God to me. And then in our marriage, like my personality is one that has battled anxiety for a long time. And so there have been different times in our marriage where I have dealt with deep fears. And when I've shared those fears with Kat, she hasn't flinched, but instead, she's spoken truth to me. And she had a choice. She could either conclude that she married a crazy person, the verdict's still out, or two, she could extend the love and the grace of Jesus Christ. That's the sweetest thing, to be fully known and fully loved. Let me just ask you, is there anything in your life that is hidden from your spouse? If there is, let me just encourage you, some point in the next 24 hours, share it with them. Not as like a punishment, but for your joy and for the health of your marriage. I remember this couple asked me to officiate their wedding. A couple weeks before their wedding, I just asked them, I said, hey, have y'all had a conversation where you have shared everything about your past? And the guy said no. He refused to share about his past. And I just said, then I won't do your wedding. And it wasn't because I was trying to put them in the hurt locker because they're going to have to find a new officiant. It was more like, I would hate that for you. To enter into marriage hiding from the person with whom you should feel most safe. So model vulnerability for one another and then reward it. When your spouse is vulnerable with you, you meet them with Jesus. Don't ever weaponize what they've shared with you against them. And then finally, live on mission. Live on mission together. Live on mission together. If you were to go to Ephesians chapter 5, we don't have time to do it right now, but if you were to go to Ephesians chapter 5, it's one of the longest passages on marriage in the New Testament, one of the most important ones. It even quotes Genesis chapter 2. But do you know what we see it saying? It is telling us that marriage between a man and a woman is meant to reflect a greater marriage. The marriage between Christ and the church. There's a reason in Revelation why the church, the people of God, is referred to as the bride of Christ. See, our stories, our marital stories, exist to point to a greater story. And it's the story of Christ's love for his church, that he has come for us, that he has laid his life down for us, that he has conquered Satan, sin, and death on our behalf, and he has made a way for you and I to experience a real, enjoyable, intimate, eternal relationship with him. So here's what you need to know. Your marriage exists to put the goodness and the glory and the love of Jesus Christ on display. I still remember a friend of mine saying, Reese Graves, he told me, he said, your marriage will be your greatest ministry. Isn't that crazy to think about? I'm standing in front of thousands of people right now, and I still believe that my greater ministry will be my marriage. Because marriage is the clearest picture of God, the triune God, three in one. It's the clearest picture that Scripture gives us of Christ's love for the church. So my encouragement, if you want to see your petty arguments just kind of dissipate, live on mission together. Like, begin to pray for unbelievers together. Start inviting unbelievers into your home and sharing Christ with them. Start serving together in the children's ministry or at Merge together. Lead a foundation group together. Get on mission together. You will feel alive because you are doing what your marriage was created to do, which was to put the glory of God on display. Your marriage doesn't exist first and foremost for your companionship. It doesn't exist first and foremost so that you won't be lonely. And it definitely doesn't exist first and foremost so that you can have sex without guilt. No, marriage exists to put the beauty of Jesus Christ on display. Live on mission together. I'll just circle back to that drive I made to College Station that landed